On February 7th, 2026, your credit card suddenly stopped working. Not just yours, millions of them, all across the country. At the coffee shop, the gas station, the grocery store. Declined. You might have checked your banking app. Everything looked fine. You might have called your bank. They'd have told you nothing was wrong on their end. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your bank's fault. It was because one company, a company you've probably never even heard of, had just gone dark. And in doing so, it nearly brought American commerce to its knees. This is the story of the day cash became king again. The day a single digital domino fell and threatened to topple the entire system. This is the story of the BridgePay collapse. The first signs of trouble weren't dramatic. They were quiet, confusing moments repeated in thousands of places at once. The morning coffee rush in cities across the nation turned into a scene of frustration. Baristas, used to a rapid-fire tap-and-go rhythm, were met with the dreaded transaction failed message. Over and over. Lines grew longer. Impatience flared. Soon, handwritten cash-only signs started appearing, taped to doors and registers, a relic of a bygone era, now an urgent necessity. It wasn't just coffee shops. In Palm Bay, Florida, citizens trying to pay their water bill online were met with a dead-end error page. The city scrambled to announce that payments had to be made in person, with cash, check, or a different card processor. In Frisco, Texas, municipal services faced the same paralysis. Restaurants, retailers, and small businesses that relied on companies like Lightspeed Commerce for their point-of-sale systems found themselves completely cut off from their primary revenue stream. For hours, a fog of confusion hung over the country. Was it a massive bank failure? A coordinated attack on Visa or MasterCard? The truth was far more subtle, and in many ways, far more terrifying. The problem wasn't the banks, and it wasn't the credit card networks. The problem was the invisible plumbing of the financial world. A single critical piece of infrastructure that acts as the bridge between a merchant and the entire banking system. That bridge was a company called BridgePay Network Solutions. And that bridge had just been burned. To understand how this happened, we have to go back to the dead of night. At 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on February 6th, the day before the chaos, technicians at BridgePay noticed something was wrong. Their systems, the complex web of APIs and gateways that process millions of transactions, were showing degraded performance. Think of it like a sickness. It started with a slight cough in the system, a little sluggishness, some intermittent errors. But this was no common cold. Within hours, the cough turned into a full-blown seizure. The virtual terminals businesses used to manually enter card numbers went down. The reporting systems they used to track sales went dark. The entire BridgePay gateway, the digital highway for transactions, was completely offline. For the average person, the term payment gateway means nothing. But it is one of the most critical and most invisible single points of failure in our daily lives. When you tap your card at a store, that merchant's terminal doesn't talk directly to your bank. It talks to a gateway, like BridgePay. BridgePay then securely routes that request to the correct card network, like Visa, which then talks to your bank to approve the charge. It's the digital middleman, the translator, the traffic cop for your money. And when that traffic cop vanishes, you get a system-wide pileup. By the end of the day, on February 6th, BridgePay was forced to make a public statement. This wasn't a server malfunction or a botched software update. They were the victims of a ransomware attack. Their systems weren't just broken, they were being held hostage. And with them, the ability of thousands of businesses across the United States to conduct normal commerce. The full scale of the crisis was just beginning to be understood. But wait until you hear who got involved next. The moment the word ransomware was confirmed, this escalated from a corporate crisis to a matter of national security. The FBI was engaged. The U.S. Secret Service, which has a long history of investigating financial crimes, deployed its forensic teams. This wasn't just about one company's IT problem anymore. It was about protecting the integrity of the nation's payment infrastructure. Investigators and cybersecurity professionals began the painstaking work of picking through the digital wreckage. They had one primary urgent question: was the data safe? In an attack like this, the first fear is always a massive data breach, the theft of millions of credit card numbers, names, and security codes dumped onto the dark web for criminals to exploit. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the inevitable, terrible news. And then, the story took a sharp, unexpected turn. BridgePay, along with federal investigators, made a stunning announcement. Based on their initial forensics, no payment card data had been compromised. Let me repeat that. The attackers, who had successfully paralyzed a nationwide payment network, apparently hadn't stolen any credit card numbers. BridgePay stated that any data the attackers may have accessed was encrypted, and that investigators had found no evidence of usable data exposure. This is where the story shifts from a typical cybersecurity incident into something far more chilling. This wasn't a smash and grab. The goal wasn't to steal your information to commit fraud later. The goal was disruption itself. The attackers didn't want your data. They wanted to prove they could turn off the switch. They wanted to hold the flow of commerce hostage. This was an availability attack, a direct assault on the operational heartbeat of the economy. They demonstrated that you don't need to steal a single credit card number to cause billions of dollars in economic damage and widespread chaos. You just need to find the right switch and flip it. And this single attack exposed a terrifying vulnerability woven into the fabric of our modern economy. It's a concept experts call a supply chain single point of failure. Think of our financial system like a giant, complex Jenga tower. We see the big obvious blocks, the banks, the credit card companies. But holding it all up are smaller, less visible blocks near the bottom. These are the payment gateways, the software providers, the back-end processors. You might not even know that block exists. But as the BridgePay attack proved, if a hacker can find a way to pull out just one of those critical blocks, the entire tower begins to wobble. This wasn't just a theoretical risk anymore. It was real. The revenue interruption happened at a scale that was hard to comprehend. It wasn't one store having a bad day. It was thousands of businesses across dozens of sectors, all at the same time. Government billing systems, utilities, restaurants, retailers, all simultaneously crippled. And perhaps the most damaging part was the uncertainty. In their statements, BridgePay was honest about the severity. They said, "We recognize that recovery may be a lengthy process." They couldn't provide a timeline. They didn't know if it would be hours, days, or weeks before their systems were fully restored. Imagine you're a small business owner. Your entire operation runs on card payments. Now you're forced to be cash only, and the company responsible for your payments has no idea when the problem will be fixed. How long can you survive? A day? A week? That uncertainty is a business killer. It's the difference between a temporary problem and a potential extinction-level event for a small company. The BridgePay incident didn't happen in a vacuum. It was part of a disturbing and growing trend. Ransomware gangs are shifting their focus. They've realized that targeting critical infrastructure, the invisible plumbing of our society, can be even more powerful and profitable than just stealing data. It creates immense pressure on the victims to pay the ransom, not to get their data back, but simply to turn the lights back on. At the same time this was happening, another major cybersecurity threat, called Operation Doppelbrand, was targeting the customers of America's biggest financial institutions, Wells Fargo, USAA, Citibank, with sophisticated phishing campaigns. The digital world was and is a battlefield, and the BridgePay attack was a major successful offensive against a target that most of us never even knew was on the front lines. So what's the lesson here? For businesses, it was a brutal wake-up call. The attack highlighted the immense risk of relying on a single third-party provider for a function as critical as payment processing. Security experts now stress the need for redundancy. Businesses need to have backup plans and secondary processors. They need a tested disaster recovery plan that answers the question, what do we do if our primary payment gateway goes dark tomorrow? Because on February 7th, 2026, it did. And for the rest of us, it was a tangible reminder that the seamless, effortless digital world we inhabit is built on a foundation that is more fragile than it appears. The ability to buy anything, anywhere, with a simple tap of a card is not a given. It's a service that can be interrupted. It's a stark reminder that maybe keeping a little bit of emergency cash on hand isn't such an old-fashioned idea after all. In the end, the BridgePay attack wasn't a story about stolen data. It was a story about stolen access. It was a story about a hidden vulnerability, not in an app or a website, but in the very architecture of modern commerce. The attackers proved a terrifying point. You don't need to break into the vault to cause financial chaos. You just have to find the company that builds the door and take their keys. The vulnerabilities in our payment systems are just one piece of a much larger, more fragile puzzle. Our entire modern world runs on interconnected systems, each with its own hidden points of failure. If you found this story eye-opening and want to understand the other critical systems we depend on that could be targeted next, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because in our next video, we're investigating the silent, ever-present threat to the one system that powers everything else, our electrical grid. You won't want to miss it.